Okay, so let us test. Now I'm speaking something probably said by the Prime Minister of Ukraine.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, we will start in 1 minute. In 1 minute. Please take your seat. Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome to this high-level international donor conference here in Warsaw. I'm Yves D'accord, I'm your moderator. I'm very pleased to moderate this event co-hosted by the Prime Minister from Poland and Prime Minister from Sweden. We're here to mobilize urgently need support for the Ukrainian people now and of course in the longer term. Our conference is broadcast live for information. We do have two aims. One is this high-level donor conference will primarily serve as an opportunity for all of us, for the international community, to announce new pledges, allocation and disbursement aimed at meeting immediate humanitarian needs due to the war in Ukraine. We also have a space and we will allow ourselves discussions on how to support the resilience of the Ukrainian society and their longer-term needs. As you can see, we are a lot, and I would like to thank you all to be there. We are a lot here together, but we also a lot here online. Let's make sure that we take the time to be able to discuss, to explore, to commit together. And here, as a moderator, I would like to ask you one thing: be sharp. I know that you will be. Be also short if you can. And I really would like you to be also straight to the point. We are a lot, and I will have to try to moderate that and being sure that we are able to go through the day and achieving our results. Now, I would like, for the opening remark, to hand over to the Prime Minister of Poland. Please, Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Madam Prime Minister, dear Magdalena, Madam President, Ursula, Mr. President, Charles, dear Prime Ministers, Secretaries and Commissioners, all distinguished guests, and in particular I'm going to welcome Denis as well, Prime Minister of Ukraine. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'm so glad to see you, many of you in Warsaw, and many join us online. All at such a short notice, but most of all, I'm glad that we are united, that this is one of key messages which we want to convey to the external world, and a critically important message. Your presence here shows that we are not indifferent to suffering caused by this brutal, unjust, genocidal war, that we will do everything in our power to stop Russia and to ensure Ukrainian victory. It is a pleasure and honor to host this conference with Madam Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson. Poland and Sweden are longtime friends and allies. 13 years ago, we have founded the Eastern Partnership, and since that time we have worked hand in hand to develop stable and prosperous ties between the EU and our eastern neighborhood. But our partnership has never been as important as it is today in the face of brutal Russian aggression. Our support for Ukraine has many dimensions, including the political alliance, military aid, but also the humanitarian effort. The situation continues to deteriorate. More than a quarter of Ukraine's population has been internally displaced or forced to leave the country. Russian attacks on civilians, murder, rape, torture, refusal to create safe humanitarian corridors, and forced deportations further worsen the conditions. Ukraine needs over 12,000 tons of humanitarian aid every day. This is information which we got from our Ukrainian friends. At the moment, only around 3,000 tons are provided through international efforts, less than 25% of the Ukrainian needs. So, more funds for food, medicine, hygiene products, and other equipment are urgently needed. I hope that today's conference will allow us to mobilize those funds. It's very, very important. We must not forget about the refugees. Already over 3 million people, mostly women with children, have crossed the Polish border. And they meet millions of people that opened their hearts and homes, volunteers, families, firemen, police officers, medical personnel, local and national government institutions, NGOs, and many others. Over 180,000 tons of humanitarian aid has been delivered to Ukraine via Poland. Similar efforts were made from many other countries, especially in Central Europe and amongst Scandinavian countries. I want to thank each and every person that helps Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. And I want to thank all the governments, institutions, and organizations for organizing support. But the strongest gratitude we owe to Ukraine and Ukrainian people. Dear Ukrainian sisters and brothers, dear President Zelensky, dear Prime Minister Shmyhal, dear Denis, we know very well that today you are not only fighting for your homeland, independence and freedom, but also for ours. We will continue to support you in every possible way, and you will win this war. We will win together. Together, we will demonstrate that European values are not empty words, but that they are backed with action. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming here in person, and thank you for all your efforts which you are doing for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I would like now to hand over to the other co-host, Prime Minister of Sweden. Your Excellency, please.
Thank you, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and first of all, thank you very much to my colleague, Mateusz Morawiecki, for co-hosting this conference and the good cooperation we've had to organize this conference. And we gather here today in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, a people that is suffering enormous injustice and great pain. And I would like to begin with a quote from Ilya, an 11-year-old boy from Odessa. I was afraid, he told Unicef. There were explosions, and I could hear them very well. And at any time, a rocket could hit the house where I live, and everybody would die. And this is just one of many testimonies, but no child should have to go through this. And after Russia's unprovoked and unjustified large-scale aggression against Ukraine, Europe is no longer the same. And the testimonies from Ukraine remind us of the worst moments in European history, atrocities that we thought no one would have to experience again. And dear Prime Minister Shmyhal, let me express my deepest admiration for the courage of the Ukrainian people, and my heart goes to all Ukrainians who are suffering due to this war. We are very grateful that you are here with us today, and that President Zelensky will join us virtually. And just as my colleague said, Ukraine will win this war, and we will stand by your side. Today, we manifest our collective solidarity with the people of Ukraine, and I'm pleased to co-host this conference with my colleague. And I'm very happy that together we're able to take this important initiative. And I also want to thank the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for being here today, but also for their leadership in managing the consequences of this war and for being our partners in this conference. I also would like to acknowledge the key role of the United Nations, represented through the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths. And Ukraine is in dire need of humanitarian and financial support, as well as military equipment. And today, at this session, we will focus on the urgent need to mobilize funding for the humanitarian response in Ukraine. And the revised UN appeal amounts to $2.22 billion US. Sweden will today provide an additional $23 million US to support humanitarian actors in Ukraine. In this context, I would also like to express my admiration for our co-host in Poland and the Polish people for their extraordinary solidarity with millions of Ukrainians who have fled their homes, and also the leading role that you have taken in supporting Ukraine in different perspectives. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, international partners have worked hard to expand their operations. Much has been achieved, but much work remains, and the humanitarian system needs our continued support. And here the UN plays an essential role in coordinating the humanitarian response. And I would like to pay tribute to all those who tirelessly work to deliver life-saving assistance in very challenging conditions and environments. The war is far from over, but we must prepare for when it is. So we need to look beyond immediate humanitarian support and lay the groundwork for the recovery of Ukraine. Life-saving assistance must be coupled with efforts to safeguard a brighter future for the Ukrainian people, creating a bridge between the urgent humanitarian operations and the long-term solutions for Ukraine. And together with the Ukrainian government, we need to find ways to support and strengthen the resilience of the Ukrainian society. And today will be an opportunity for us to discuss how the international community can help address Ukraine's current economic challenges created by the war and present concrete financing solutions. And while we meet here in solidarity, we cannot forget the fundamental issue. Russia must end its aggression against Ukraine. There is an easy solution. They could just stop the war and go back home. International law must be respected, and we will work to bring the responsible for the Russian crimes in Ukraine to justice. And let me end here where I started, with Ilya from Odessa and the millions of Ukrainians in need of support. With today's conference, we are sending a clear signal that we continue to stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Anderson. And I would like to bring in from Kyiv President Zelensky live. President, please, welcome. We are very happy to receive us here at that conference. President, you have the floor.
Dear ladies and gentlemen,
full-scale Russian war against Ukraine. Our meeting in this format and with such an objective proves that Ukraine, Europe, and the whole world are on the way to our joint victory. Our country retains full functionality. Our continent is united. Millions and millions of people around the world support us so that the tyranny would lose. The armed forces of Ukraine and all of our heroic defenders bravely and firmly defend our freedom on the battlefield. But how this brutal war will end is decided not only on the battlefield. There's also the economy and finance, humanitarian support, and the ability to ensure normal life on liberated territories and rebuilding what was destroyed by the Russian army. Freedom must demonstrate that it protects and provides the people better than tyranny, which for decades has enjoyed a massive flow of money for oil, gas, and other raw material sales. That's how freedom wins. That is why this conference is so important for everyone in Europe, both strategically and tactically. First, we need sufficient financial resources so that Ukrainian men and women would be provided with everything they need while the war continues. The Ukrainian state, as the manager of these funds, will cover all urgent needs, both defensive, social, and humanitarian. Second, we are already preparing a large-scale recovery and rebuilding plan for Ukraine after the war, and we need a strategic international support plan for Ukraine that will be a modern analog of the historic Marshall Plan. It is money, technology, professionals, and growth opportunities which are required to return to a safe life, modernization, and social development. This will be an investment in the stability of the whole of Central and Eastern Europe, so the aggressor would know that he will not break the power of Europe and all free nations. Everything destroyed by the war would be rebuilt. The restoration of Ukraine must now become the same historical example for our time and future as the restoration of European countries after the Second World War. And such free world investments, should they be quick and sufficient, will mean that millions of Ukrainians who have been displaced by the war would be able to return home. We offer our partners, the civilized and responsible countries, to take patronage over those regions, cities, and industries of Ukraine that have suffered from the war unleashed by Russia, to assume patronage so as to work with us to ensure the full recovery of these regions, cities, and industries. Such a patronage project can create a new and equally historic example of interaction and partnership between the states of the free world, between regions, cities, and companies of Europe and democratic states. Third, Ukraine needs to move quickly to the European Union by acquiring the candidacy status, which must be granted right now under conditions of war and according to special shortened procedure, that is to gain this EU membership. This war of Russia against Ukraine was planned as a preparation for striking a blow against the united Europe. So more unification would be a powerful response to all that. That is why Ukraine's membership in the European Union must be an absolute reality, not just promises or prospects, but practical steps. I know we are ready for these steps, and you know it too. I'm sure that most of you clearly understand this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful to Poland and Sweden, to Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki and the Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson for hosting this high-level donor conference this year. I'm grateful to the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, and to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for their leadership that makes Europe a true defender of freedom. I'm grateful to all the participants of the conference for being with us in this war for a free and democratic life for millions of people, not only for Ukraine, but for all of us who may be threatened by tyranny. I believe that Europe will show its strengths today. You will show your strengths, including the strengths of international institutions, UN institutions, whose representatives are present with us now, and can be more effective, because this is for our common freedom. Thank you for attention. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you very much, President Zelensky. And now I would like to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Ukraine. You have the floor, Your Excellencies.
Дякую.
Thank you.
Шановний пане прем'єр-міністр
Mr. Prime Minister of Poland, dear Mateusz, the Prime Minister of Sweden, dear Magdalena, dear Mr. President of the European Council, Madam President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, dear colleagues, there is war in Ukraine. Our losses in terms of infrastructure, economy, people are extremely high. We got more than $600 million of direct losses. More than 5 million of Ukrainians are forced to flee their homes and go abroad. More than 12 million of Ukrainians have been displaced. A third of Ukrainian business has stopped. We are now in the European Union, in Poland. So let me tell you this. Ukrainian army is fighting now. Вим'я Бога за наша і ваша вольність. And for the victory, we need 4 things: weapons, sanctions, financing, and European perspective. Weapon to defend Ukraine and all of Europe from the aggressor. Sanctions to stop aggressor for further financing the war. Funding to support our people and our economy, and Euro integration, because this is the civilizational choice of Ukrainians. Today is the conference of donors, so let me speak more about financing. Ukraine, together with the partners all around the world, is preparing the recovery plan and Ukraine Recovery Fund, United 24 Recovery. We are planning not just to restore what was damaged or destroyed by aggressor. We want to build a new European country, starting with the green technologies to the European standards of construction, from agro-processing to self-sufficiency in energy sector, from development of defense industries to climatic modernization, from free European market to the modern urban spaces. And we are planning to do it right now. And right now we want to be a member of the European Union. We need a recognition in the European family now. That is why we are supporting our and your freedom. We understand that our goals are ambitious, and we believe that the whole world will help us in terms of finance, legislation, creativity, art. Each of you can contribute to building a new Ukraine, a country of dream. This is not an allegory. We have created a Ukraine Recovery Fund, and each of you can contribute. People, corporations, countries, organizations, everyone can do their part. Everything will be transparent. Deloitte audit reports on the website. Everyone will be able to clearly see everything. U24.gov.ua, join in. We also are creating a Ukraine recovery plan, and we propose every country, every region, every city to join in. We will create the parameters for recovery. We will together decide how the Ukrainian cities should look like and how Ukrainian economy should work, what technologies, what areas will be of priority, how the business should work, what regulations should be used. And then we invite every country, every region, every city of the world to actually contribute to the recovery. A month ago, the President of Ukraine and me urged European cities to take patronage over the damaged Ukrainian towns. Well, the result has exceeded my expectations. The UK committed to support the recovery of the Kiev region. Denmark is patroning Mykolaiv, Greece, Odessa. So that's a good start. But there are Kharkiv, Sumy, and Chernihiv who still need your help, as well as hundreds of small towns and villages all around Ukraine. And I know that they will receive this help for your freedom and for our freedom. Be brave like Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine, glory to Poland, glory to the democratic world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and also thank you for being with us in person. And you will be also at the roundtable this afternoon, and that will be so important to discuss, in fact, long-term recovery. I would like now to give the floor to President of the European Council. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you, dear Prime Minister of Ukraine, dear Mateusz, dear Magdalena, dear Ursula, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank both Magdalena and Mateusz for organizing this event. Here in Poland, you have built a massive solidarity operation hosting more than 3 million Ukrainian refugees and acting as a hub to support Ukrainians within Ukraine. And Sweden, dear Magdalena, Sweden has always done more than its share in supporting refugees and being a steady friend to Ukraine. I'd like to personally thank you and your citizens for that. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, several weeks ago, with President Zelensky, we discussed the idea of a Solidarity Trust Fund to support Ukraine, and at our last European Council meeting in March, we decided to create this Solidarity Fund. And this is a concrete expression of our commitment to Ukraine together with the help and support of external donors. And our solidarity efforts will focus on 3 key areas: humanitarian support, short-term liquidity needs, and reconstruction. And we must act now to address the immediate suffering of the Ukrainian people, both in and outside Ukraine. That's why priority number 1 is to raise money for this humanitarian action. There is another urgent need, this is liquidity. Ukraine needs significant funding to keep the state running, roughly 5 billion euro per month according to the IMF. We have mobilized and disbursed macro-financial assistance to our friends and together with our friends and partners. But we must not be complacent. We must do much more to deliver practical support now, immediately, to make sure that nurses, doctors, teachers can be paid at time and Ukraine can continue to function. And finally, I'd like to send a personal message of hope and encouragement to all Ukrainians, to the soldiers on the ground, to all the Ukrainians supporting the war effort, and to the millions who have fled the war and long for their homes. We will help to rebuild your country and your economy, your homes, schools, hospitals, businesses. The future of a safe and prosperous Ukraine, combining reconstruction funding with the necessary reforms. And this is not just a long-term theoretical vision. Reconstruction starts today. Dear friends, the cornerstone of our Solidarity Trust Fund is precisely the word trust. We trust Ukraine. And our efforts here today reflect this trust. Together, we will rebuild a modern, prosperous and democratic Ukraine, a country full of confidence and ready to embrace its European future and its place in our common European family. We must also make sure that we get the most out of every euro, and the EU is best placed to support your efforts to link reconstruction with the reforms that will transform Ukraine, and we support Ukraine in its choice of the European path. The people of Ukraine, talented, capable and hardworking, you know best what your citizens need in your towns and regions, and will be right by your side to offer practical, concrete and operational expertise and our full support. And that's why we fully embrace President Zelensky's ambitious vision for a modern, forward-looking Ukraine that engages grassroots leaders and citizens alike. And his concept to partner EU cities and regions with Ukrainian cities and regions is an excellent idea because it will breathe new life into areas traumatized by war. As we approach Europe Day on May 9th, a day to remember peace and unity after the horrors of World War II, we are also reminded of the Marshall Plan that helped to revive Europe and get economies back on their feet after the devastation of war. And today, as we again see the ravages of war on European soil in Ukraine, I firmly believe, this Solidarity Trust Fund can be and must be the starting point of a European Marshall Plan for this century, an engine of solidarity for the renewal and reconstruction of Ukraine, for the prosperity of Europe, and for the transatlantic alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Prime Minister of Ukraine, dear Denis, allow me to end on a more personal note. During my last visit to Ukraine in Borodianka, I visited a small park with a statue of a famous Ukrainian poet, Taras Shevchenko. Russian soldiers put bullets in the heads of this statue. They tried to execute the Ukrainian poet, just like they are trying to execute Ukraine. But they've not succeeded, and they will not succeed. The statue is still there, standing proudly, a defined symbol, just as Ukraine continues to stand proudly, defined, indestructible, unbreakable. And we, the EU, together with all our friends, we are with you. You are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you, President Michel. And may I just remember to everybody, and I know it's difficult, we have so much to say, but I need you to stick to the time, please. Sorry for the next one we're following on, but that's what happened. So, President of the European Commission, you do have the floor. Your Excellencies, please.
Thank you very much, and I understand the restricting of the time. So first of all, I really want to thank you, Magdalena, you, Mateusz, for organizing this, and it's wonderful, Dennis, to have you here with us. I mean, dear fellow leaders, colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, the brutality of Russia's aggression is shocking the world. And I've seen it indeed with my own eyes when I was visiting Kiev. I understand the restricting of the timing, so first of all, I really want to thank you, Magdalena, you, Mateusz, for organizing this, and it's wonderful, Dennis, to have you here with us. I mean, dear fellow leaders, colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, the brutality of Russia's aggression is shocking the world. And I've seen it indeed with my own eyes when I was visiting Kiev, and I went with you, Dennis, to Bucha, to see the mass graves, to see the body bags, to see the scars and wounds in the houses and hospitals that have been shelled, the kindergartens, the schools. It is atrocious. It is a war crime on an everyday basis that Russia is committing. And therefore, we stand by your side. We cannot match the bravery and the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people, but we can back you, we can help you, we can stand by your side. We can help you with our economic power. On one hand, the sanctions. Yesterday, we unleashed the 6th package of sanctions, and these sanctions are biting deep into the Russian economy, and this is the purpose of it. Putin has to pay a price for this aggression. But second, also with economic power to support you. 10 weeks of war. Since then, we have supported with 4 billion in economic support, financial support. We have mobilized 3.5 billion for the refugees in the European Union, but more important, 3 weeks ago here in Warsaw, already 1.8 billion we have pledged for the internally displaced people in Ukraine. But this is not enough, this is for sure. And therefore, many thanks again for this pledging conference. I have the privilege and the honor to start with the pledging, and we're happy to pledge 200 million euros for the people in Ukraine, the internally displaced people in Ukraine, and I hope that many, many more will follow us. Last comment on what I heard from President Zelensky and you, dear Dennis, as you were asking for practical steps. You're so right. Reconstruction, full support from our side. We need indeed a reconstruction, as you said, to build a competitive, prosperous, you said, country of dream. You have us on your side. I think if we manage to have the investment, billions of hundreds of billions of euros, and the reforms, this will not only build your country anew, but this will also pave your way into the European Union. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President. I would like now to give the floor to the UNOSG for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Coordinator, please. Please, you have the floor.
Thanks very much indeed. Thanks, our hosts, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Special thanks, of course, to the Prime Ministers of Poland and Sweden for hosting this and for the strong support to the humanitarian response from the European Union. And being in Warsaw, I thank the people of Poland who so generously have welcomed and continue to support an astonishing wave of refugees from Ukraine needing that support and welcome. When my Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, visited Kiev 1 week ago, he described Ukraine as an epicenter of unbearable heartache and pain. When I myself visited the capital a week before and looked down on those mass graves that we've been hearing about again today in Bucha, I too came away, as anyone would, with an overwhelming feeling of how, in Guterres' words, how absurd the war is, how senseless the suffering is, and how vital it is that all of us, the world, steps up to do everything we can to ease the pain of those people. Just a few days ago, with our friends from the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter is here with us, together we managed to evacuate over 100 people, but only 100 people, from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol in our joint operation, and in agreement with the parties to the conflict. Yesterday, with the same partnership and with the same agreements, we escorted out, I think, over 340 civilians from around different parts of Mariupol. And today, as we speak, a convoy is proceeding to get to Azovstal by tomorrow morning, hopefully to receive those civilians remaining in that bleak hell that they have inhabited for so many weeks and months, and take them back to safety. This elaborate and dangerous operation has taken days and a Herculean effort in coordination, advocacy, agreements, deployment, partnership to achieve. It would have been worth it to save one person, and we're now trying to do it for more, but it's a sobering reminder of the difficulties of operation for the safety and protection of the civilians of Ukraine, how difficult it is even to achieve these results. In Ukraine, the lives of ordinary women, men, and especially children have been torn apart, and we have seen this. The evidence is in front of us. Their homes bombed, families uprooted, often leaving the country, separated, killed, injured, traumatized, and we heard about Unicef's evidence of that. The war has caused the fastest forced population movement since the Second World War. Here we are in Poland, in witness of it. More than 5.6 million are refugees, and over 7.7 million people are displaced within Ukraine. And many others, often the most vulnerable indeed, have been unable to leave their homes. This includes older people, the infirm, persons with disabilities. Nearly 16 million people need humanitarian aid, according to our latest estimate. About 40% of all the Ukrainians left in the country need and deserve humanitarian aid. This is a suffering on a scale not seen in Europe, certainly for my lifetime. The United Nations and our more than 200 humanitarian partners have scaled up and deployed additional staff across the country. We operate now out of 8 designated hubs outside Kyiv.
Martin, can I ask you to conclude, please?
To be quick.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have reached many people from there. We've launched an emergency appeal asking for 2.25 billion, and we hope we will also see some support for that. We're here to stay. We're all here to stay. We're here to attest to the solidarity needed by the people of Ukraine, and I'm very grateful to the organisers of this conference the opportunity to speak. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you. And I would like now to give the floor to the President of the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross. Please.
Thanks a lot. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The level of death, destruction and misery of civilians affected by the international armed conflict in Ukraine is abhorrent and unacceptable. I thank the Prime Minister of Poland and Sweden to bring us together today to enhance our response. I am addressing you today as donors, certainly, but first and foremost in your capacity as high contracting parties to the Geneva Conventions on the issues at heart of our mandate, the life-saving impacts of humanitarian action and international humanitarian law. Importantly, international humanitarian law, or jus in bello, is about the ways warfare is conducted. It is solely humanitarian, seeking to limit the suffering caused. Crucially, it is independent from questions about the justification or reason of war or jus ad bellum. The Geneva Conventions and additional protocols identify critical issues where the consensus of the parties is vital to offer a minimum of humanity in conflict, so that civilians and wounded people are protected, so humanitarian aid can reach those in need, so that prisoners of war are treated humanely, so that people do not disappear, so that mortal remains are collected in a dignified manner. The law is also clear on the obligations to respect and ensure respect for international law, including to facilitate the access of humanitarian action. Access is an obligation, not a point of negotiation. The ICRC knows the reaching consensual agreements on how difficult it is to reach consensual agreements on humanitarian issues. We appreciate the agreements that have been made by the parties, for example, in the safe passage arrangements, allowing people to leave areas of hostilities, such recently in Mariupol. Martin has mentioned it. Progress has been too slow and too little. It has led to senseless death and prolonged suffering, but we have seen the potential of agreement to be made, and we implore parties to take expanded efforts to save lives. Today, the generous funding of humanitarian action for people impacted by the conflict is critical, but it is only part of the picture. To meet the needs of the civilian populations, funds must be equitably operationalized. For this, the space for neutral and impartial independent humanitarian action must be protected so that those in most need can be served without discrimination and where people are. Already present for 8 years in Ukraine, the ICRC works with the Ukrainian Red Cross Society and is massively scaling up its response today. Our support in places like Kyiv, Mariupol, Odessa, Donetsk, Luhansk and elsewhere includes emergency assistance such as food, water and essential items. We are supporting hospitals and primary healthcare facilities with medical equipment and emergency preparedness. We are working on mitigating the impact of weapons contamination and helping repair damaged water stations and homes. Tens of thousands of local Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers and staff across Europe are working tirelessly to provide support to those needs. Excellencies, the foundations for reconstruction in Ukraine must be laid today to avoid further humanitarian suffering. Service is vital to the survival of the civilian population. Water, electricity, healthcare must continue. Maintaining these services in the coming weeks and months will avoid the reverberating secondary impacts and mitigate further degradation in the longer term. In this way, frontline humanitarian action is a vital stabilizing factor in a fragmented environment and a building block towards broader peace-building efforts. Those living through the horrors of this conflict need urgent and pragmatic solutions for now and for the future. I urge you to support principled humanitarian action, to do your part in championing respect for international humanitarian law and action, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is now the end of the opening remarks, which I really would like to thank you all. It really set the scene. with a special thanks to President Zelensky and Prime Minister Shimla. That has been an extremely important part. Now we're moving to two different parts. We're now moving to a part where we will hear some voices from the people directly affected by the war, and we will hear some major international organizations talking about that, and then we will transit to the pledging session. But first, a video of 2 minutes about the situation and about some of the people affected by war. Please. Thank you very much. And I would like now to give the floor to the UN High Commission for Refugee, Filippo Grandi. Filippo is with us by video conference. Filippo?
Greetings, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, in the 10 weeks since the Russian invasion, a third of Ukrainians, as we've heard already, have been forced from their homes. This is the largest human displacement crisis in the world today. And it is they, the displaced, that are the focus of UNHCR's response and also of my quick remarks. Working under the government's leadership in Ukraine, the United Nations, as we heard, continues to deliver, but not just in the west of the country, but increasingly in the center and east, to help also those who are affected but not yet displaced. And UNHCR, my organization, is part of this effort. It has expanded its cash assistance program for IDPs and stepped up emergency shelter support, including collective accommodation. We're also providing targeted protection counseling, psychosocial support, and legal aid. But we, all of us, must continue to step up, and we will. Our discussions with Ukrainian officials also revealed their deep and very justified concern for the plight of the 5.7 currently million Ukrainian refugees. Ukraine's neighbors have not only kept their borders open, but have taken a humane, efficient, and effective approach, as I've seen myself several times, to sheltering Ukrainians. They deserve our praise and gratitude. We cannot, however, take for granted this exceptional hospitality. The European Union, and we heard the Commission President speak about that a few minutes ago, continues to play a key role, including by granting temporary protection to those fleeing Ukraine. This support must continue and be expanded as host states include refugees in health, education, and other social services. Inclusion is the key challenge until people can return home. UNHCR, alongside the rest of the UN family and 140 partners, helps coordinating international assistance through the Refugee Response Plan and focusing on key protection issues, especially for children and women at risk of trafficking and exploitation, through activities that include cash assistance, information campaigns, and along with Unicef, the Blue Dot Network. Please allow me to conclude with 4 practical asks. First, step up humanitarian support for Ukrainians wherever they are. Fully funded humanitarian appeals are critical. They're not yet fully funded, so that's very important. Second, invest in housing solutions in Ukraine for internally displaced people that provide decent accommodation for the medium term, not temporary camps. This also means cash programs to expand choices available to IDPs, including enabling them to find their own accommodation. Third, support the Ukrainian government in its efforts to enhance shelter repair and reconstruction so that, that refugees and IDPs can return home voluntarily and with dignity when they are ready, as President Zelensky just told us. And fourth, reinforce states hosting refugees that are actually shouldering the international community's collective responsibility for hosting refugees. And finally, and most of all, and immediately, please, do all you can to end this atrocious war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Filippo. And I would like now to give the floor to the Executive Director of the World Food Programme. Please, you have the floor, David.
Thank you. Let me get, thank you, and I'll get right to the point. You've heard the numbers. We're reaching about 3.3 million people inside Ukraine right now. We hope to scale up to about 4 million by the end of this month, 6 million by end of next month, obviously dependent upon two things, access and money. What we're trying to do in terms of the hard to reach areas, of course, is bring in-kind support. But where there is some degree of supply chain throughout the rest of Ukraine, we're trying to bring in cash-based transfers to put liquidity into the marketplace to help a very, very serious cash flow problem that they have, as well as we're trying to buy as much as we can locally to stimulate the local economy. So you know the issues we're all facing. We're reaching as many people as we can. We need to continue to move. But let me hit on one other matter that is absolutely critical because it impacts not just Ukraine, but it impacts the rest of the world. That is, if we don't get those ports open in the Odessa region, we're going to have economic, agricultural collapse inside Ukraine, a country that feeds 400 million people. And I can tell you the devastation globally will be beyond anything we have seen. Food prices are going up, fuel prices are going up, shipping costs are going up, and we're looking at catastrophe upon catastrophe. And we know what happens when we don't reach people inside. It costs us 100 times on the outside. We saw that in the Syrian war. I know Germany just did a study. The impact is literally over 100 to 200 times more expensively for those we can't reach on the inside. But if we don't get those ports open, because the silos right now are full, agricultural harvesting for like wheat, et cetera, is to take place in July and August. And where, if they do get back into the fields, where are they going to put that food? Because the silos are full. Why are the silos full? Because the ports are blocked. Why are the ports blocked? Because Russia has it blocked. So we are asking Russia, please, we will have famines around the world unless we open up those ports and allow passageway to help people around the world. This is a critical issue for Ukraine. And most importantly, it's a critical issue for the rest of the world over the next 8 to 12 months and next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now would like to give the floor to the Executive Director of UNICEF. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Excellencies and colleagues, and thank you all for your critical work. Every day that the war in Ukraine continues is a nightmare for millions of children. Nearly 2/3 of Ukraine's children have been forced to flee. Many have seen things no child should ever see. Their homes have been bombed, their schools have been attacked, along with all the systems that could help them survive. And we must never forget the hundreds of children who have not survived, many of them killed by explosive weapons, and hundreds of other children who have been wounded in this senseless war. Every minute counts in the effort to help every child affected by the war. Reaching them is extremely challenging, especially in parts of eastern Ukraine where shelling and attacks are continuous. From the very start of the war, UNICEF has been working wherever children need us to be, from the front lines to the borders to the countries hosting refugees. We've delivered millions of dollars worth of emergency supplies to hospitals, shelters, train stations, schools, and child protection centers. And we have trucked in safe water for over 1 million people. And both in Ukraine and in neighboring countries, we are operating ongoing child protection services, education, healthcare, and social protection support. We will continue doing everything we can for Ukraine's children to meet their urgent needs and also to support critical social services that build resilience so they'll be able to rebuild their lives. I wish this was enough. It is not. Only peace will ever be enough to give these children even a fraction of what they've lost. Children deserve peace. Until then, we will stay and deliver for Ukraine's children and families. In closing, I'd like to express my appreciation for the tremendous efforts by our UN teams, both inside and outside Ukraine, and for the extraordinary solidarity Poland and other refugee-hosting countries continue to show. I would also like to express our gratitude to our donors in every sector. Your generosity has helped us bring hope and help to children living through this nightmare. We're counting on you to help us continue to help Ukraine's children, and Ukraine's children are counting on all of us. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. And now to conclude that part of the session, I would like to give the floor to the Director General of the World Health Organization. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, moderator. I'm glad to be here in person in Warsaw. And I would like to start by thanking Excellency Prime Minister Morawiecki and Excellency Prime Minister Andorsen. It's often said that the first casualty of war is truth. The same saying could apply equally to health. The disruption of health services across Ukraine has been catastrophic, compounded by displacement and the fact that millions of people remain trapped in conflict areas, unable to move. This puts health workers, care workers, services and infrastructure and the health of millions of Ukrainians at severe risk. We salute the nurses caring for newborns in hospital basements, ambulance drivers and paramedics rescuing people from bombed buildings, medical teams conducting surgery and delivering babies under fire. You have seen it all. But even worse than disruptions to health services are attacks on healthcare. WHO has now verified 191 attacks on healthcare, with 75 deaths and 54 injuries. Hospitals, clinics, ambulances, health workers, patients. Let's be clear, attacks on health are a violation of international humanitarian law. This is utterly unacceptable. WHO has more than 80 staff in Ukraine, supported by hundreds more in neighboring countries and around the world. Prior to the conflict, WHO was working with the Ministry of Health to prepare for the worst-case scenario, pre-positioning supplies in hospitals. Within days of the Russian Federation's invasion, we sent in medical supplies, trauma kits, and more from our logistics hub in Dubai, mobilizing also millions of dollars. So far, we have delivered more than 316 metric tons of medical supplies, supporting care for 7.5 million people and more than 200,000 surgeries. We're also working in neighboring countries to support the health needs of the more than 5 million refugees who have now fled Ukraine. WHO supports proposals to provide...
Dr. Tedros, can I ask you to conclude, please?
Yes, just a few seconds. WHO supports proposals to provide Solidarity Trust Fund. And we thank donors who have supported the health response so far, and we hope donors will make this appeal today a success. We call for human rights and international humanitarian law to be upheld, to allow for safe and sustained humanitarian assistance. We call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire for Mariupol and other encircled cities to allow civilians to evacuate and to allow WHO and our partners to deliver vital supplies and assess health needs. We call on the Russian Federation to stop this war. There is only one remedy for the disease of war: peace. Muir Dilia Ukraine. Peace for Ukraine, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we are closing that part and we are moving to the pledging sessions. I think what we've heard very clearly from the people affected first and also from your own remarks, we understand why sustained funding of the humanitarian response is so needed. So we will now hear some pledges from the delegation, and we'll start with the delegation that are with us in person. And I would like to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Albania to start. Please, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. I have I'll say very few words, starting from Albania as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, where we are co-pen holders with the United States for Ukraine, and in coordination with other like-minded countries, we are giving our own contribution in the initiation of meetings and drafting the documents regarding the war and in full support of Ukraine. On the other hand, bilaterally, we have been among the first to make our contribution for ammunition for the armed forces of Ukraine, and in the same time we have adopted all the legal framework to allow every Ukrainian people to come to our country for a period of time they need or they wish. So in this donors conference, Albania aims to contribute with €1 million. I know that this will not change the destiny of the war or of the reconstruction, but we are very honored to be here, and I am very thankful to both the Prime Ministers of Poland and Sweden to make us part of it, and till the end we will do our best to honor our obligation towards the Ukrainian friends and the Ukrainian people, aiming, of course, what everybody aims here, to have an end of this war and to see peace come as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And I would like now to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Croatia, please.
Thank you very much, dear Prime Minister Morawiecki, Prime Minister Anderson. Thank you very much for inviting us here today. It's a great pleasure to be again in Warsaw, and I would like to thank President Zelensky for his words, and also especially Denis Shmyhal, my friend, Ukrainian Prime Minister, for presenting to us the entire concept of the reconstruction of Ukraine. We have all come as friends to Warsaw. We have come as prime ministers, ministers and officials who want to extend solidarity with Ukraine in the moment where Russia's aggression has not only hit Ukrainian women, Ukrainian children, Ukrainian elderly, civilians or soldiers, Ukrainian houses, Ukrainian infrastructure, but it has hit on Ukrainian identity and on Ukrainian freedom. And this is key to understand what Russian aggression has caused. It has caused pain for almost 13 million of those who in such a short time had to leave their homes, for those who left Ukraine, almost 6 million, and for the devastating destruction that it will take years to recover. Croatia knows what being a victim of aggression is, and that's why we are here with you, and we shall stand by with you as long as it takes. Today we shall allocate another €5 million to support this donors conference, but it's just a part of the contribution of our consistent political, diplomatic, humanitarian, technical, military aid that we shall extend to you. Croatia stands beside Ukraine, and we shall be standing as long as it takes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I would like now to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Finland. Please.
Thank you so much. And first, let me thank Poland and Sweden, dear Magdalena, dear Matthews, for hosting this event today. The humanitarian situation in Ukraine is extremely difficult due to Russia's ongoing aggression. It is now crucial to achieve robust ceasefire for the evacuation of civilians and the delivery of aid. We need to help those in the most vulnerable positions: women, girls and persons with disabilities. As the number of displaced people grows, we are all doing our utmost to protect vulnerable groups from abuse and trafficking. Finland is working with the Ukrainian authorities to transfer a group of disabled persons and unaccompanied minors to Finland. Finland has provided Ukraine with humanitarian and development aid, as well as material and military assistance. We have made a national budget decision on a further allocation of 700 million euros to help Ukrainian refugees in Finland. In addition to this, we are currently preparing an additional contribution to cover current needs and to assist with reconstruction. The contribution, subject to parliamentary approval, will be approximately 70 million euros. We have also made a decision today to send additional military equipment to Ukraine. We strongly condemn Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Finland is ready to strengthen sanctions against Russia, including in the energy sector, and I welcome the Commission's newest proposal on sanctions. Russia must be held accountable for its grave violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. Finland supports the investigation by the International Criminal Court. We have granted financial support to the ICC and are seconding experts. In helping Ukraine and Ukrainians, solidarity is the key. Ukraine is fighting for Europe, and you are the winners of this war. Our thoughts are with you, and our actions are for the future of Ukraine and its brave people. Finland is ready to do its part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I would like now to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Georgia.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, dear friends, honorable guests, first of all, I want to thank Prime Minister Morawiecki and Prime Minister Anderson for co-hosting our meeting today, as well as the esteemed presidents of the European Council and the European Commission. You have always been devoted partners of Georgia on our European and Euro-Atlantic integration path. First of all, I want to mention that, of course, we condemn Russia's full-scale military aggression against Ukraine, which is a clear and blatant violation of fundamental principles and norms of the international law, as well as the UN Charter. The outcome of the war in Ukraine will define the future architecture of European security and lay the ground for the new security framework for our region and beyond. The war in Ukraine has caused a major humanitarian crisis in the region and requires immediate action from the international community. My government has stood in full solidarity with the Ukrainian people and mobilized our resources to alleviate the effects of the devastating war. We steadfastly stand with the international community in full solidarity with Ukraine, and we will continue supporting Ukraine politically and in practical sense, both bilaterally and within multilateral formats. The contribution that has already been dispersed by Georgia is valued at $7 million, and we continue providing assistance to more than 28,000 Ukrainians affected by war and currently living in Georgia. More than 500 tons of humanitarian cargo has been sent to Ukraine by air and by land. And my government has been supportive to the displaced people from Ukraine through provision of accommodation, essential items, clothing, food, vital medical services, access to schools and kindergartens free of charge. And we continue supporting our brotherly nation with additional $7 million by the end of 2022. So in addition, our private sector, I also want to mention that NGOs and individual citizens are also offering accommodation, food, clothing, and other assistance to the Ukrainian citizens who live in Georgia. According to Ukraine's National Post, Georgia is the first among 191 countries in supplying humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Therefore, once again, I want to mention that the unity of the international community in providing active support to Ukraine is a matter of urgency and necessity. I wish again Ukrainian people peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And I would like now to hand over the floor to the Prime Minister of Iceland. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, dear colleagues and dear friends. Iceland stands in full solidarity with Ukraine in the face of Russia's ongoing, brutal, illegal military aggression. And the Icelandic people stand with the Ukrainian people, the people who thought on the 24th of February that they were going on with their daily lives, going to work, meet their friends and family, people who want to live in a world where we respect humanity, human rights, where we value democracy and freedom, and where we solve our disputes with dialogue and not war. As we have heard today, there is no end to the horrors of war, death and destruction. and we are facing a humanitarian crisis with more than 16 million people in the urgent need of humanitarian aid. And allow me to pay my respects to the people of the neighboring countries of Ukraine, not least to our Polish hosts, for their unwavering commitment to assist their Ukrainian neighbors. Iceland is resolutely a part of a broad international alliance to assist Ukraine, and so far my government has contributed roughly €500 million Icelandic kronas to humanitarian efforts, which is equivalent to 4.2 million euros. We have opened our doors to refugees. As of last week, around 1,000 Ukrainians fleeing the war have been warmly welcomed in Iceland. We have placed a special focus on assisting individuals and families of vulnerable refugee groups, including disabled children and sick and injured, and their close relatives, including those hosted in Moldova. And we need to pay special attention to the fact that the war is impacting women and men differently, not to mention the huge rise in conflict-related sexual violence and human trafficking. Today, I'm announcing the pledge of additional 425 million Icelandic kronas, the equivalent of 3 million euros, thereby almost doubling the total amount from Iceland allocated to humanitarian and economic aid for Ukraine. And with this pledge, Iceland's current contribution stands at the equivalent of 7.2 million euros. Humanitarian aid will be channeled through different international organizations and economic support through the World Bank's multi-donor trust funds for Ukraine. Dear friends, I want to thank the organizers, Prime Minister Morawiecki and Magdalena Andersson, for this initiative, our host chair, and all of you who organized this. Our solidarity, which we have shown through this war, is our biggest strength, and our humanity is what unites us. And both is at display here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, and I would like now to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Slovakia, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. First of all, dear Magdalena, dear Mateusz, thank you very much for organizing this very important event, and it's great to have Denis Šmihal with us. Wonderful. Well, what I first want to say that we have to still have very strongly in mind that this is not just a crisis, this is a war, brutal war. People are being killed, innocent people are being killed, and that's why it's so important that we meet on this kind of event, and we call to the whole world that we won't stop helping Ukraine because you are brave. You showed such a bravery in this time. Really, you showed the bravery to the whole world, and full respect to that you're keeping in this bravery till this day, and you want to win this war, and you will have our support because we are your neighbor, but we are not just a neighbor. We are also a friend, and we understand, just like Andrej said from Croatia, we fully understand what you're fighting for. You're fighting for our values, you're fighting for the freedom. You have to pay with blood, and we'll support you that you don't have to pay anymore. And that's why I'm so glad that the democratic world understands how important it is to provide you all the help you said. You named it. Weapons, ammunition, sanctions, everything that you said, humanitarian. And we as a neighbor, of course, all the Ukrainians who needed to find a refuge before the war, they found a refuge in Slovakia, and they will, as long as they need to, till they come back. And I know they want to come back because we speak to them. And it's such a wonderful thing from your people that they honor the leadership, they honor your country, and they want to go back. So we'll definitely support you because I think the important thing is we're writing a history. We need to show to every dictator from this moment for the future that war is not a solution, that he will be isolated immediately. This is what we need to do. That's why our response is so important. That's why we need to be so united and so strong and keep going till we stop Vladimir Putin and you will have your victory. We want you to be a stable and prosperous country. Freedom, democracy, that's what you deserve, and therefore we are a strong advocate for your candidate status. And I think you can do it, just like Volodymyr Zelensky said that. I believe that you can do it in an expedited way, because we as a Slovakia went through same experience. European Commission provided us a strong help, and we advocate for a reform team for you, because I think you can do it in really very quick time. And that's what we will be advocating for you, and that's our support for you as well. And the last thing, of course, any help you need. We participated on the pledge a month ago, where we pledged over 500 million euros for the help needed. We approving whenever you need something from the military aid, we approving it immediately. We will help you to repair your equipment, and if there will be any request from the weapons that we have, we'll gladly provide, because I think that's the right attitude in this situation. You need to win this war. We are there here with this in you, or in this with you, and we are all united. You are Europe. You are one of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I would like now to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Slovenia, please.
Thank you, dear Magdalena, dear Mateusz, dear Denis, dear colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would also like to join all of you and stress once again the importance and the timely organization of this pledging conference. As the Russian illegal and unprovoked aggression against Ukraine protracts in time, we are witnessing one of the worst humanitarian disasters. At the same time, we are filled with admiration for the Ukrainians who are showing immense courage, defending their homeland, and at the same time fighting for the universal values of freedom and democracy. President Zelensky, Prime Minister Shmyhal, Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people are a true inspiration for us all. When we visited you in the middle of March, together with Mateusz and Peter, we saw that Ukraine will never be defeated, and the main question when this war will come to an end mostly lie in your courage and in our help. This is a combination which will prevail. And I'm also proud that the European Union has showed a high level of unity in responding to the Russian aggression, as well as effectiveness in providing assistance. We have stood up in this war, we will overcome it, and we will prevail. And we look forward to the day in the near future when we can welcome Ukraine as a full member of the European Union. Slovenia commends especially Poland and all other neighboring countries of Ukraine for their generous hospitality and welcoming millions of Ukrainian refugees. More than 60,000 Ukrainian refugees came to Slovenia too, and a big part of it found shelter in Slovenia. Just a few days ago, a group of orphans were relocated to our country to escape from the dangers of war. We have responded in line with our moral obligation, aside of material, technical and military donations. We have donated several billions euros to different humanitarian allocations for Ukraine, and we are increasing it today for another million through the Unicef fund and additional in-kind assistance for Ukrainian people. We are also preparing a special law on Ukraine to pass through Slovenian Parliament to shorten the procedures to be able to deliver help on time. So we stand in solidarity with Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And I would like to move and give the floor to the Prime Minister of Romania, who is joining us via video conference. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank to Prime Minister Anderson and Prime Minister Morawiecki for hosting today's event. I would like also to salute the presence of Prime Minister Shmyhal and also to express our utmost appreciations for Ukrainian people's brave resistance. Ukraine and its people, of course, need our support in the immediate, but also for reconstruction. I have witnessed myself during my recent visit to Kiev, Irpin and Borodyanka, the large scale of human suffering and the destruction inflicted so far by the Russian illegal, unprovoked, and unjustified military aggression. I would like to reassure from the outset of the solid and continued support of the Romanian government, citizens, and civil society for Ukraine. From the beginning of the war to the date, Romania's assistance has been multidimensional. The Romanian government has made several humanitarian donations, which total over 6 million euros. In addition to this, we pledged an additional in-kind offer of 3.2 million euro, representing 1,900 tons of fuel. Moreover, the humanitarian hub in the north of Romania dispatches humanitarian aid for the IDPs in Ukraine and those affected by the disruption of war. The Romanian government also implements a comprehensive set of measures in support of Ukrainian refugees. These measures involve funds of over 70 million euro in support of the economy of Ukraine. Romania took the initiative of liberalizing transport conditions for Ukrainian exports, especially for agricultural products. These measures allow Ukraine to continue exporting essential agricultural output, thus mitigating the volatility and disruption of international markets while generating much-needed income for our Ukrainian neighbors. Romania will continue to stand by Ukraine, including in the reconstruction process. In our view, the rebuilding and reconstruction process should be considered and designed from a broader perspective by investing both in rebuilding the economy and the infrastructure while consolidating the democratic institutions. The reconstruction process and efforts of advancing democratic values and practices will accompany Ukrainians' European perspective. In this regard, Romania's position is consistent and clear-cut.
Prime Minister, Prime Minister, can I ask you to conclude, please? Thank you.
Yes. So, strong support for the European perspective of Ukraine and in a similar logic for Republic of Moldova and Georgia. Thank you very much for your attention. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And I would like now to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Serbia that is joining us also via video conference. Please, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, esteemed Prime Minister Morawiecki, esteemed Prime Minister Andersson, distinguished President of the European Council and President of the European Commission, dear colleagues. I would like to thank you for organizing this high-level international donors conference, giving us the opportunity to express solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Since the outbreak of the conflict, the Republic of Serbia has been observing with particular concern its adverse consequences for the civilian population, rapid deterioration of the humanitarian situation, and the growing number of refugees and internally displaced persons. Serbia condemns all attacks on civilian population and civilian objects and any use of force contrary to international humanitarian law. We call for creating conditions for the delivery of humanitarian aid and support all efforts to end the conflict. Serbia voted for the resolution on the humanitarian consequences of the aggression against Ukraine adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on the 24th of March. On the 27th of February, the government of Serbia adopted a decision to provide any kind of humanitarian aid to endangered Ukrainian people and activated a temporary protection mechanism for displaced persons coming from Ukraine. This is the first time that such a legal mechanism is employed in our country. Serbia supports the activities undertaken by the United Nations and the international humanitarian actors to urgently address the needs of the most vulnerable categories affected by the conflict. And for that reason, I take this opportunity to pledge 3 million euros from Serbia for the humanitarian response in Ukraine. This package of support will be allocated via United Nations agencies working on the ground, namely Unicef and UNHCR. The people of Serbia sympathize with the people of Ukraine in their desire to return to normal life in which future generations will live without the fear of war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you for this word. And allow me also to just acknowledge we've received a lot of statement and pledge pre-recorded by many states. I just want to name the Netherlands, New Zealand, Denmark, Israel, Estonia, Canada, United Kingdom, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, Malta, Colombia, Norway, Germany, France, Portugal, and the US. And we would have the chance to see them maybe later on when possible. I would like now to call Your Excellency Minister Susan Raab from Austria, please.
Thank you, Prime Minister Morawiecki, Prime Minister Anderson, President Michel, President von der Leyen, Prime Minister Schmihal, and dear colleagues. I would like to first thank the governments of Poland and Sweden, as well as the presidents of the European Council and the European Commission for convening today's conference. The 24th of February 2022 was a turning point in the modern European history. The unprovoked and unjustified Russian attack on Ukraine is a blatant breach of international law, and it undermines European security and stability. It has caused unimaginable destruction and suffering of the civilian population we would have hoped to never see in Europe again. This brutal war is sending shockwaves around the world. We are all horrified by the pictures and reports that continue to reach us from Ukraine. And the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance is staggering. Austria stands with Ukraine. We will, of course, continue to give temporary protection to those who escaped the war in Ukraine. So far, it's been more than 67,000 Ukrainians who registered in Austria. And we will continue to provide support on the ground, as it is reported that more than 15 million people in Ukraine are in desperate need of humanitarian aid. Austria has indeed a long-standing tradition of engaging in humanitarian aid in Ukraine and of providing assistance to the civilian population of countries affected by humanitarian crisis. Since the beginning of the aggression against Ukraine, Austria has contributed 19.6 million euros via its international humanitarian partners. And we also offered in-kind assistance via the EU's crisis protection mechanism to Ukraine and its neighboring states affected by the refugee crisis. In line with that tradition, I'm glad to announce that Austria will provide a further 41.96 million euros or 44.2 million US dollars from its Foreign Disaster Relief Fund via Austrian NGOs to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine and its neighboring countries. 15 million of these funds will go directly into the support of women and children. For one thing, it's sad reality. It is particularly women and children who suffer in this senseless war and who require particular humanitarian assistance as well as protection from violence and human trafficking. The Austrian government's commitment of 41.96 million euros matches the exact same amount of donations people in Austria have already made in a display of incredible solidarity with Ukraine. In order to provide people in need with basic livelihoods and services, it is imperative that humanitarian organizations have free and unhindered access to people in need and that their safety and security is guaranteed. Let me thank our humanitarian partners for their outstanding efforts under these very difficult circumstances. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. And I would like now to give the floor to His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Czech Republic. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear Prime Minister Šmihal, dear Prime Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to commend the governments of Poland and Sweden for convening this conference. Together with most of the countries of the world, Czechia has strongly condemned the armed violence and widespread indiscriminate attacks on civilian population and infrastructure in Ukraine. We also condemn the continued violence of international humanitarian law by Russia. It is important publicly to reaffirm our commitment towards the affected population of Ukraine, including internally displaced people and refugees from Ukraine in our region. We have to scale up our humanitarian assistance as well as our advocacy. Since the beginning of the Russian war in Ukraine, Czechia has provided humanitarian assistance worth €22 million to the affected population in Ukraine, as well as to refugees from Ukraine, in particular in Moldova. In view of the continued war and growing needs, I would like to confirm a mobilization of additional €18 million for the ongoing humanitarian assistance by the Czech government, apart from public and private in-kind and financial donation exceeding €80 million already. Czechia is also one of the countries of destination for refugees from Ukraine. More than 300,000 refugees have been granted the temporary protection, most of them being women with children. It consists of 3% of our population. We are a 10 million country. The war in Ukraine and its humanitarian and geopolitical consequences has also set our upcoming EU presidency's priorities under review. And during the Czech presidency, we are ready to initiate a comprehensive stabilization, reconstruction and resilience program for and with Ukraine, with a regional dimension targeting resilience of Moldova and Georgia as well, not least in the areas of energy and cyber security. If the situation allows it, in line with the March European Council conclusions, we would like, as the presidency, to facilitate organization of international donor conference in support of the reconstruction program, which would raise financial contributions, foster long-term investment initiatives, and identify expertise both from public, private, and civil society sectors. Allow me to express my hope that the war in Ukraine will soon end, while our solidarity and cooperation with Ukraine and its population will be further enhanced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And I would like now to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Hungary, please.
Thank you very much, dear Prime Ministers and dear colleagues. I'm representing Hungary, which is a direct neighbor to Ukraine. So the war in Ukraine definitely puts a security risk on ourselves as a neighboring country as well. We Hungarians did not and do not want this war. To the contrary, we want peace to return to our region as soon as possible. And although we made it very clear, I want to underline it here as well, repeat it in order to enable everybody to hear and understand. Hungary stands for Ukraine and the sovereignty of the country. We can make a clear differentiation between those who attack and those who are attacked. And we do condemn the military aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. And we do condemn the serious violation of human rights. And we do urge for immediate investigation of all possible war crimes committed. And our solidarity has already been proven by the fact that we have received 670,000 refugees arriving from Ukraine. We provide all of them with shelter, accommodation and food, and we offer jobs for all those who intend to stay on a longer term, and we definitely ensure schooling for the kids of those who stay for a longer time. And I'd like to underline that we will allow all the refugees from Ukraine to enter the territory of Hungary, and we will help all of them. And let me now share with you our set of pledges, which contains 5 elements. First, we are ready to take part in the reconstruction of a school and a hospital in its entirety in the Kiev region. Of course, if the Ukrainian authorities demand for another location, we are ready to adjust ourselves, no question. Second, we understand the growing number of internally displaced persons who escape from the war and arrive to the western part of Ukraine to survive, basically. We are ready to provide them with mobile homes. We are ready to start the deliveries basically anytime you require that. And I would like to mention here the fantastic job, the tremendous job, which is performed by Governor Mikita in Transcarpathia, who makes his best to ensure peace and stability in that region. Third, we are ready to provide 1,000 fully state-financed scholarships for students who had to flee from Ukraine on the Hungarian universities to enable them to continue or to complete their studies. Fourth, we are ready to provide treatment and medical service to wounded Ukrainian troops in the Hungarian hospitals without any kind of limitation on numbers. And fifth, we are ready to provide hospitalization for 130 children from Ukraine in our specialized hospitals. Altogether, this set of pledges of 5 elements have a total amount of 37 million euros. And we hope, dear colleagues, Mr. Prime Minister, that this war comes to its end soon. We are praying for that as well. And we do hope that peace returns to our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. And I would like now to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Latvia, please. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for Poland and Sweden for convening this conference. I think that the principle of this conference should be the longer the speech, the greater the pledge. So I'll be as brief as possible. But let me say that Latvia has been a very committed supporter of Ukraine. We have already provided medical, IT support, transportation support. Military aid has exceeded 200 million euros, and definitely we intend to continue. We are planning also to participate in the reconstruction of infrastructure of schools, of kindergartens, of hospitals through our bilateral development assistance. Latvia has already provided 5 million euros through World Bank to help cover budgetary needs, and today I announce our pledge and the plan to double our contribution by 10 million euros for ABRD's Ukraine Emergency Public Service Support Program. We'll continue working with our Ukrainian friends to address the needs as they arise, and we also believe that actually the best help to Ukraine would be granting the candidate status to Ukraine in the next EU summit, and also working to end this war as quickly as possible through the victory of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. And I would like now to give the floor to the Ambassador for Australia to Ukraine. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Presidents, Prime Ministers, Excellencies, Australia stands with Ukraine in its fight for survival and condemns Russia's unprovoked, unjust and illegal invasion in the strongest possible terms. Australia is horrified by the scale of this humanitarian disaster and the damage being caused by Russia's war in Ukraine. Over recent weeks, when speaking with colleagues who have returned to Kiev and passed through the formerly peaceful towns of Bucha, Irpin, Borodyanka, they have conveyed to me the unfathomable extent of devastation, particularly in civilian areas and against civilian infrastructure. This is a brutal war, not just against an army, but against a people. We abhor continuing accounts of Russia's indiscriminate attacks on civilians and are extremely concerned by reports that more than 12 million Ukrainians are now displaced internally and across borders, and that over 1 million Ukrainians have been forcibly deported to Russia. Many have faced terrible abuse, and that is why we have pledged so far 65 million Australian dollars towards meeting the urgent humanitarian needs of the Ukrainian people in Ukraine and in neighbouring countries. This is in addition to over $225 million in military assistance to Ukraine and an extensive autonomous sanctions regime. and we will continue to do more. All Australian government funding provided to date has been delivered through trusted humanitarian partners, including the UN and non-governmental organisations. Our partners are now, in turn, delivering on the ground for the people of Ukraine. We are also working in partnership with the United Kingdom to get urgent relief supplies directly into Ukraine, where they're so keenly needed. Donations from the generous Australian public, including through...
Ambassador, may I ask you to conclude?
Yes, indeed. Donations from the Ukrainian diaspora are supplementing these contributions, and it's clear from these donations and contributions Australians recognise the injustice being perpetrated by Russia. Ukraine needs sustained practical support from us all. Australia welcomes the contributions and assistance of other nations who are working to support Ukraine, and we are pleased to be a key partner in this effort. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Ambassador. And now let me give you the floor to His Excellency or Her Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Lithuania. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me extend the appreciation to the governments of Poland and Sweden for hosting this very important and timely event. Personally, talking about Ukraine is really very emotional because my grandmother was Ukrainian and still have relatives there. So everything what happens there really affects Lithuanian society as well, because I think that many European citizens have their relatives in Ukraine as well as I do. And that means that Ukraine was always the big part of European history and definitely will be the big part of Europe's future, and I hope the part of European Union's future as well. And since the beginning of Russia's war in Ukraine, Lithuanian institutions provided over 124 million euros assistance to Ukraine in weapons, humanitarian aid, also financial help. And Lithuania is a great supporter to Ukraine, not only by this support, but also calling for further sanctions on Russia and by weakening Russia's possibilities to continue with this war and preventing another wars in Europe as well. And I think it's really important is to talk also about freeze Russian assets in this appeal, because when we are talking about reconstructing Ukraine, definitely we will need huge amount of funds, and this is a possibility to say that the aggressor must pay for his actions. And talking about the additional help in Lithuania, now there is about 2% of our total population, the refugees from Ukraine, and in the revised budget of the state, 370 million euros is dedicated to the support of these refugees. And also we're continuing our support in the international financial institution support for Ukraine. It was in the World Bank's instrument, multi-donor trust fund, 5 million euros in grants. Also, 2 weeks ago in the spring meetings, I announced about 10 million euros in grants. And today I'm happy to announce that we are helping Ukraine in support of for the support for internally displaced persons. We will donate to Ukraine 2 million euros. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And I would like now to give the floor to the Ambassador for Japan to Ukraine. Please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, Prime Minister Shimihari, I'm very pleased to see you again. And let me extend that respect and gratitude to Prime Minister of Poland and Sweden for including Japan in this very important and timely conference. Now, what we've been witnessing is certainly the largest humanitarian crisis and tragedy, of course, for Ukraine first and also Europe. But we started to feel that, now impact of the Russian aggressions started to go beyond Ukraine, Europe, and reaching to East Asia, where Japan is located, and other parts of the world. So this is the reason why we fully understand, believe that Japan should be represented in this conference. So thank you very much for extending your invitations. Now, what we have done and what we are going to do is, first, emergency humanitarian aid, and we have already pledged and started to supply $200 million. Now, second, when it comes to the direct budgetary and economic support, financial support to Ukraine, we have pledged and we are soon going to provide $300 million to Ukrainian government. And third, Tokyo is encouraging all the Japanese local governments and municipalities in joining us in the construction and recovery operations when it is possible. And last but not least, Prime Minister of Japan, Foreign Minister of Japan personally reaching out to the other governments in Asia to join us in support of the Ukraine, particularly in the form of the financial support, and also joining us in the sanctions against Russia. So, Prime Minister Shimihari, I can assure you that the next time I definitely come to see you in Kyiv. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And just would like to give you a bit of perspective about what will happen in the coming minutes. So I would like to ask two more statements, and then I know I'm looking already at our two Prime Ministers hosting to give you a concluding remark. I know that the press and the press conference is an important one that you will have to depart, and then I will ask the other speakers to stay to continue, because I think we want to be able to listen to your statement, just to give you a sense of what is coming to happen in the next 30 minutes. So please, let me give the floor now to the Deputy Director General of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, co-hosts, Prime Minister, Excellencies. Switzerland is here with pleasure. Switzerland here is with honor. And Switzerland is here with full of commitments. We have three roles that we want to fulfill. One, as a donor, our government increased its humanitarian funding to 80 million. This beside and in parallel to our development cooperation. We want to continue to be an actor. We opened a couple of weeks ago our bases in Lviv, where we work with the local council, with local organizations, in order to repair infrastructure, to support host families, to support the displaced person. And Switzerland wants to be here as an advocate. We face the grim fact that millions of people cannot be reached. This is a blunt violation of international humanitarian law. Switzerland, as the depository state of Geneva, appeals to all state parties, to all warring parties to respect humanitarian law. Now we have also to think to the next step and to link these relief operations with recovery, with rehabilitation. We are very committed to quality humanitarian aid, but we want to reach out to the next step. And in this regard, we look forward to country-led, multi-stakeholder operations together with the authorities on the ground. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador and Director General. I would like now to give the floor to the Minister Kittier from Belgium, joining us by or via video conferences. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. More than 2 months after the Russian invasion, the human suffering continues to grow in Ukraine. Wherever the war is, civilian pays the highest price. 24 million of them need our support. We can't look away when fathers need to say goodbye to their children, and mothers fear bombs at the places they could once call home. Belgium strongly condemns the attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure. International humanitarian law must be respected. We must show all people in Ukraine that we stand by them in solidarity. And I am particularly worried about the children and the women in Ukraine, or those who fled the country. We have to do everything to make sure that they are protected. And I want to thank our partners, UN organizations and the ICRC, for all the work they are doing. The evacuation of more than 100 people from Mariupol this week shows again that their work is truly life-saving. In view of growing needs, I'm happy to announce that Belgium will step up. For the urgent humanitarian and social needs, we will scale up our support to a total of 30 million euros for the people of Ukraine as part of a larger effort of the Belgian government. This funding will be directed to the most urgent humanitarian needs, as well as the support for social basic services. It comes on top of our flexible funding to humanitarian organizations and aid convoys sent to Ukraine and the neighboring countries. I would like each of us to remember that there is a person behind those huge numbers of people in need. So let's not forget them, let's not fail them, let's not fail the people of Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And I see that we still have a bit of time to have a few more statements. I'm watching very carefully the two Prime Ministers. You will let me know. So I would like to give the floor to the President Werner Hoyer of the European Investment Bank. Please, President.
Excellencies, let me thank you very much for inviting the EU Bank to this important conference. EIB is here for a free, independent Ukraine. We have been in Ukraine for quite a while, in particular in Greece after 2014, when after the aggression on Crimea, we stopped our business in Russia and redirected funds. We are proud that we managed to rapidly deploy almost 700 million euros to the Ukrainian government for urgent liquidity needs just a few days after the Russian aggression. In addition, we are now providing 4 billion euros for Ukrainians who had to flee their country. That means in the member state of the European Union, but also in other neighboring countries. But our main role does not lie in grant funding or budget support. It lies in concrete investments in support of EU policies in our member states and partner countries. The EIB is there because in addition to humanitarian assistance, there is an urgent need to rebuild critical infrastructure to help Ukraine and its people to remain resilient while they defend themselves and our European values against Russia's aggression. This is where EIB, working in partnership with other IFIs, including our friends at EBRD, and of course with the European Commission, can provide technical experience and financial expertise. Subject to the availability of the EU guarantee, we can immediately accelerate the delivery of up to 1.5 billion euros to address some of the most urgent needs. These are rather visible and symbolic projects like rebuilding of schools, bridges, hospitals, and so forth. I think the EIB is there because the planning phase for countrywide reconstruction should start now, even if full-scale rebuilding can only take place once the war is over. The challenge will be immense, and we should be ready. We stand ready to help Ukraine to develop a comprehensive strategy for financing the reconstruction. We are also well placed to take an important role in the financial management of a solidarity fund under the policy steer of the European Commission, if asked to do so. We have rebuilt before, and together with all of you in solidarity with Ukraine, we will build again, rebuild back again, creating the conditions for a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President. And I would like now to give the floor to a representative of business, and that's very important to have you here around the table. Thank you for that. So I would like to call first the representative of Google, Mr. Matthew John Britton. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you to our political leaders for bringing us together for this important moment. I'm Matt Britton. I run Google in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. And from Google, 1,000 of us in Poland, tens of thousands across Europe and all around the world, we stand with you, the people of Ukraine. We'll continue to play our part, and I think the last 2 years have shown us when governments, companies and communities come together, we can confront crises at our best. From our side, we have across the world donated 35 million to in-kind and humanitarian support to aid relief efforts for the people in Ukraine already, as well as for those fleeing the war. That includes 10 million to Poland, organisations working with temporarily displaced people, a city which has become such a symbol of safety and solidarity in this crisis. And yesterday we announced a 1.5 million grant to our colleagues at International Rescue Committee to expand critical information support to United for Ukraine, which is an information portal for civil society effort to help people find information on housing, legal aid and psychological support. And today we pledge a further $10 million in cash, grants and in-kind humanitarian support for people in Ukraine, bringing our total commitments from Google and from our employees directly to $45 million. And from the start of the war, we've also focused on information and cyber security. We know that people turn to us for information, and accurate and timely information in a time of war can be the difference between life and death. So we work round the clock since all this began to make our tools and technology as helpful as possible to those in need. Rapid air alerts to people with Android mobile phones in Ukraine, or shelter and humanitarian aid points for those fleeing, and also protecting against cyber attacks. I need you to conclude, please. I need you to conclude. So we're shielding 180 Ukrainian sites, government and other information sites against those things. And our CEO, when visiting Warsaw recently, also pledged a further 10 million to fight misinformation in the region. So we pledge an additional 10 million today, bringing us to $45 million in total, with a further 10 million for fighting misinformation. We stand here to work with all of you, political leaders, NGOs and communities, and the people of Ukraine.
Thank you very much. And I would like to give the floor to the representative for AstraZeneca, Mr. Hans Siebesma. Please.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of my company, AstraZeneca, I would like to thank the Prime Ministers of Poland and Prime Minister of Sweden for hosting this event and for inviting us to this important conference. It's an honor for us to be here. In this humanitarian crisis, we are deeply impressed by the efforts of the Polish government as well as the Polish community to support the people of Ukraine. We have ourselves as our company 200 Ukrainian employees, many of whom are now being hosted here in Poland and are benefiting from this support. AstraZeneca is very committed to response efforts. We have given already 7 million in humanitarian support to date, including donations to the Red Cross as well as medicines donations. In line with our purpose as a healthcare company, we're also doing everything possible to ensure that patients can continue to access our essential and life-saving medicines. Our priorities go with our employees, the patients, refugees, and of course all those who are impacted by this tragic and devastating war. Our efforts do not stop here. On behalf of AstraZeneca, I'm pleased and proud to confirm our response to the call to action and to pledge to donate today an additional $3 million in humanitarian support, raising our total contribution to over $10 million. We strongly believe that it's our responsibility to continue to contribute to the humanitarian relief efforts and to support the people of Ukraine. Thank you very much. It's an honor for us to be here.
Thank you very much. And the last representative of the business sector, Boston Consulting Group, the chairman of the board, Mr. Hutten-Klapinski. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you for inviting me to this important conference. The Boston Consulting Group tries to help in the best way we can through pro bono projects or donations. We do 5 things. Firstly, we develop the app to find a shelter where there is 10,000 already matches. It's a peer-to-peer app functioning very successful, and we are developing this further in Poland but also in other markets. Second thing, we do the analysis of the pain points of the refugees, and one of the biggest is education, so we help with the summer camps, to organize summer camp. 3, we organize donations among our consultants. We collected 1.5 million euro through just donations. Next one, we organize forums for the CEO of largest firms globally to drive awareness. And the last one, we built virtual Ukrainian office where we recruit Ukrainians across the globe for the future when the office can be restarted. Thanks to everybody. I'm also impressed by everybody who is doing so much.
Thank you very much. And your statement conclude, in fact, this long but very important sessions. I would like now to turn to our co-host to give their brief, in fact, remarks and concluding remarks. And then I know that both of you will have to leave, including the Prime Minister of Ukraine will leave also for the press conference. I just would like to flag already that at 2:45, I repeat 2:45, we are resuming here for the roundtable. And the roundtable will be in the presence of the Prime Minister of Ukraine and a lot of different people talking, in fact, about long-term needs and how do we try to think and do a roadmap around some of the questions. So 2:45. Please, but first, our 2 co-hosts, I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Sweden. Please.
Excellencies and friends, thank you all for attending this conference, and your participation is an important signal of solidarity with the people of Ukraine. And on behalf of the Swedish government, I want to convey my sincere thanks to my colleague and co-host, Mateusz, and acknowledge the leadership of Poland during this crisis. I would also like to recognize the strong message from President Zelensky and Prime Minister Chihal, illustrating both the plight and courage of Ukrainian people. And I would also like to thank Charles and Ursula for being our partners in the conference. And of course also the UN and humanitarian partners who are present today. Through them we convey our appreciation for all the humanitarian partners who are working under dangerous circumstances working to meet the urgent and growing needs of women, men and children in Ukraine. And their needs continue to grow because of the war, so this conference is very important from that aspect. I would also like to thank everyone who has participated today, presidents, prime ministers and ministers, for their generous contributions to help the people of Ukraine. Your pledges will allow the United Nations, the Red Cross movement and other humanitarian organizations to deliver aid to those most in need. And I'm happy to say that it looks like we have surpassed our expectations today. Going forward, support for a better Ukraine remains critical and immediate financing needs are enormous. So we look forward to continuing our dialogue today with a high-level roundtable on measures to support Ukraine's effort to meet the economic challenges created by the war and rebuild Ukraine. The war is a human tragedy. Russia must end its aggression now, and this is easy to do. You can just go back and go home. And today, from Warsaw, we have collectively sent a strong message that we stand with Ukraine in these dark times and that we will continue to support the people of Ukraine. And it is my strong belief that brighter days lie ahead so that children like Ilya, of whom I spoke earlier, can return back home, go to school and play with his friends in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, Your Excellencies. Now I would like to give the floor to the Prime Minister of Poland, please.
Thank you for all the pledges made so far and for all the efforts that you have been making before. At the same time, I want to urge you to work even closer with our government and the government of Ukraine. We are in permanent daily contact with Denis, with President Zelensky. Our logistics system is allows for much more efforts, much more efficient delivery of humanitarian aid. And we are able to reach out even the most remote areas of the country, which Denis can confirm, because we are doing this every day. Deliveries of lorries, trucks going from our southeastern part of Poland to all the cities and towns in Ukraine. And let us not forget also about the refugees who were forced to leave Ukraine. Everyone seeking shelter in Poland is receiving housing, food, healthcare, free public transportation and free schooling for children. We refused to create permanent refugee camps, opting for full integration of refugees with our society, at least at this juncture, as long as they want to be with us. And of course, we all hope for them to be able to go back to Ukraine as soon as possible. This is a more costly approach, but much more sustainable and much more humane. With enormous help of millions of Polish families, we are able to create a welcoming and open environment, allowing all the refugees to find their second home in our country. Today, I can declare that Poland will continue the support for Ukrainian refugees with no less than equivalent of additional 3.4 billion euro till the end of this year. The money will be spent on subsidizing accommodation, family support programs, free public transports and other means of support. On top of that, we will continue to provide free education, healthcare and other public services, language courses, access to our labor market and many others. In addition to our efforts at home, I'm glad to announce that Poland will deliver additional 100 million euro of humanitarian aid to Ukraine, food, medicine, hygiene products, housing units. These are these container type of towns which we already have built, several of those in Ukraine, and other equipment. While this conference is focused on the humanitarian aid, I don't want to omit the level of military support that Poland has been providing, worth over 1.6 billion euro only until today. This support will also continue and increase in every necessary and possible way. Last but not least, I want to underline that we all must increase pressure on Russia. Sanctions have to be severe. Poland will become fully independent from Russian gas and oil very soon. We have been already cut off Russian gas, as you probably might have heard 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, because we didn't want to agree on paying in rubles. I call on all the European governments to follow, and I'm glad to see many of our government's proposals reflected in the sixth package of sanctions. Full embargo on Russian gas and oil are needed, with secondary sanctions that prevent from circumventing the ban. And we must ensure a full and permanent confiscation of Russian assets and federal reserves. This cannot be a taboo any longer. Full confiscation of Russian assets, Russian oligarchs and Russian Federation. And this has to be dedicated for the recovery of Ukraine, reconstruction of Ukraine. Later today we will be discussing the reconstruction of Ukraine. It is Russia that started this war, and Russia has to pay for its consequences. This requires bold political decisions. This requires courage and statesmanship. I strongly believe that we are capable of doing this. The time is now. Thank you for all the pledges. I have just received the final number, and I'm very glad to announce that all of us managed to mobilize $6.5 billion. These are pledges which were put, and thank you, also in all the videos which are available. Let us make sure that these funds reach Ukrainian people as quickly, as efficiently as possible. Today has shown that our support for Ukraine continues, and that here is no selfishness among us. And it is a very good conclusion, because if selfishness wins, Putin wins. If unity wins, Ukraine wins, and we all win. This is the message I would like to leave you with. Once again, thank you for all your time and commitment, and let us celebrate that, and celebrate all Ukrainian heroes, in particular all Ukrainian heroes, with a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you also for hosting, in fact, this conference, and for your generosity here. Prime Minister, I'll let you go. I know that you have now the press conference. I just would like to remember the people that we are reconvening at 2:45 to really explore some of the questions related to the economic needs for Ukraine over the long time. 2:45. Thank you very much.
Supplement.